come and join the conversation. Unfortunately, we have a very busy day today, and my colleague Joyce and myself, we have to, apart from UNEA and everything else, there are about 100 heads of states, governments, and ministers on campus, and everybody expects to be met with. So, as much as I would have liked to come earlier in the day, I couldn't, but I'm glad I'm here. Not sure what I should say, but from the UN's perspective, I think three things. First, that we greatly appreciate countries, whether it's the countries of the global north or the global south, working together and finding solutions that work best for them. Because that's, I always have been with the UN for a long time now. And I often say, and I've worked quite a bit in Africa myself, used to be a senior policy advisor to the president of Liberia at some point of time, Madam Johnson Sirleaf, and other parts of Africa as well. And I always say that if the UN can make itself redundant, then it has done its job very well. Because if any country needs the UN, then the UN hasn't done its job well. So I still hold that view that we should not be required. Countries should be able to manage themselves well and work together, whether it's with their neighbors or with regional country groupings, or as a continent, or any thematic issues. Second, a lot was talked about climate change and environmental degradation. The global conversation has been primarily about mitigation, and I say this quite often because I think it is almost impossible for any politician to convince their constituents that it is okay for some country to have a carbon footprint per capita of 500 tons per annum, whereas other countries of the world that have 50, so everybody freezes their carbon footprint and everybody goes home happy. That doesn't work. There's no politician on the planet that can really sell it to their constituents that it is okay for other countries to be much better off, and because we are in a bad situation, you don't need to grow your economies because somebody else came before you and grew their economies much better. And as emissions are global, so we all either succeed or fail together. Now that's a good conversation to have, but it hasn't succeeded. Since the Stockholm Conference in 1972, we've had multiple iterations. There's the Rio Conference, 92, there's the Rio Plus 20 in 2012, and all kinds of Rio conventions and the COPs. We're about to get into the 25th Conference of Parties of UNFCCC. The conversation continues. Mitigation does not work because it is an unequal arrangement that people want to enter into, and it's impossible to strike a deal because people talk about the art of the deal. There is no deal here unless some countries want to reduce drastically and other countries want to stay where they are. There is not going to be a deal. And I'm sorry I have to say this because I'm the Assistant Secretary General of UN Environment. But I wanted to be truthful here because I don't see much hope there. But adaptation works. Adaptation works in a big way because adaptation is about people. It's about our rivers, our lakes, our oceans, our ecosystems, our landscapes. It is about lives and livelihoods. So, and it is also about mitigation. I'll give you an example. There's a project that I'm directly involved in. I chair something called the Sustainable India Finance Facility that I helped establish in India. And before that, something called the Tropical Landscapes Finance Facility in Indonesia. The government there doesn't put a single penny into these facilities. But in Indonesia, we have already produced an investment of $350 million. Private finance, doing public good. The first project is with Michelin, the tire company. It's in a landscape of 88,000 hectares of land, which is, by the way, bigger in size than Singapore, the country. 50% is a conservation area managed by WWF International. The other 50% is a production forest of sustainable rubber that produces more than twice the average productive capacity of rubber in Indonesia. Currently, their average productivity is 0.8 tons per hectare, This one produces 1.7 tons per hectare. So the trick is very simple. You take a big problem, you break it down to manageable parts, you find the partners that will be able to manage each of those parts well. You bring them together, and lo and behold, you have a solid investment. And that's what you call a bankable project. It becomes bankable when you can manage the risks. It's all about managing the risks. In India, we're working with the government of Andhra Pradesh, and also with the government of India, but predominantly with the government of Andhra Pradesh, in a project that converts 6 million farmers to zero chemical farming. And there is nothing like this happening anywhere on the planet. I don't say this because I happen to be from India. I say this because I know. There's nothing like this happening anywhere on the planet. As of today, they have converted 525,000 farmers. And mind you, there are no subsidies. This is a farmer-to-farmer extension. Yes, the government helps build capacity, spread the knowledge, women self-help groups. Andhra Pradesh has done phenomenal work there in women self-help groups. They have 11.5 million women organized into self-help groups of 10 women each. And that is how this works, because women are at the forefront of the conversation. And they plan to get to 6 million farmers by 2021. And the business model is pretty simple there. It's a different business model. Currently, the government of India spends $1 billion every year on fertilizer subsidies in Andhra Pradesh, not the whole country, just that state. So since this obviates the need for using fertilizers, which by extension obviates the need for subsidies, so the subsidies are being saved. So the savings will actually pay back the $2.5 billion that the Sustainable India Finance Facility is deploying. And everybody wins, and most of all the planet wins. So my point is that we can always look back and feel desolate, feel frustrated that we haven't done enough progress. Or we look into the future as a new world where every possibility is capable of being actualized. And that's what I believed in, and that's what we are trying now. This morning I was in a room full of about 27 different ministers from Africa, Americas, and Asia, and Europe, and everywhere. And this is what we are discussing. The time for talking billions is over. We have 10 years to turn around. The 1.5 degree report tells us that we have till 2028 to turn around. The emissions gap report tells us, now Paris Agreement, everybody talks about the Paris Agreement like it's something that's going to really save the planet. You know what? The Paris Agreement is your fast track to 3.2 degrees Celsius of global warming. It's not 2 degrees. To remain at 2 degrees, we need to do 3 times better than what we are doing now. And if you want to be at 1.5 degrees, which is what the IPCC report says, we need to do 5 times better. But that's not impossible, because if you take the bad side of the argument, you will go out and say, oh, so you want me to eat only 20% of what I eat or what I wear. That's not the argument. The argument is that the world currently has a failed food system. It destroys 40% of the food we produce is wasted. And just imagine the waste: production, transportation, processing, distribution, waste, and then processing again. How much energy, how much food we waste. If that was not the case, we'd be feeding 1 billion people healthy, nutritious food every day. So the trick is in finding these inflection points. The Prime Minister of India talks very endearingly about waste to wealth. Of course, in the politics, people of course say a lot of things, but I really take inspiration from that, because it is a fact that you can generate wealth from waste. India produces about 1.8 billion tons of waste every year. If that is processed, just imagine what it can turn into. Just one country. We're not talking about the world here. So the point is that the solutions are there. So we need to focus on adaptation, innovation, and the finance is available. The finance it's not difficult to find the finance. It is about creating that narrative of hope, of positivity, and creating that compact of partners who really want to do something meaningful who are not in there for a fast buck, the 15% return, there will be no planet as we know it in 10 years. There are not going to be any 15% returns. And some people have woken up to the reality, some people are waking up, the sooner the better. Thank you.